Plans to turn the Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macao Greater Bay Area into the world's largest Bay Area in terms of GDP by 2030 have been filed with the National Economic Planner. Around the globe, every Bay Area boasts its claim to fame. New York and Tokyo are financial meccas. San Francisco and Silicon Valley are synonymous with innovative technology. So what is the Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macao Greater Bay Area's advantages to turn itself into a world-class economic hub? Are the different political, legal, and economic systems of the Greater Bay Area in Guangdong a facilitator or an impediment? And how will China's Greater Bay Area's vision and strategy reshape China's economic transformation in the future? To discuss all these interesting issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined in the Beijing studio by He Jing, an attorney from Angie Law Firm, in Hong Kong by Hong Hao, chief strategist at the Bank of Communications International, and in Seoul by Professor Jeffrey Towson of Peking University. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Ray. The Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macao Greater Bay Area is the only Bay Area in the world that combines two different political systems under the one country, two systems. I mean, this has caused a lot of controversies if you look at unrest in Hong Kong in recent months. So how difficult is it to run this Greater Bay Area under this sort of a two systems mechanism?
I think right now it's really the beginning of starting this the Bay Area, the Greater Bay Area project. I don't think we have seen this impediments that people are really concerned about. I think that people are really discussing about it. But as a practicing lawyer, right, we've been dealing with this what we call common law in Hong Kong, right? And also we're dealing with the day-to-day practice with respect to what we call PRC laws. So far, we really haven't seen like a bigger barriers. To some extent, people say, hey, common law is something like business people really preferred. Okay, it's more predictable. The case law gives more flexibility, and the Chinese PRC law, to a large extent, has been really evolving very, very quickly. So at least from the legal system, we have not seen any big troubles. And I think this actually might give lots of interesting space for the future innovation.
Jeffrey Towson, what do you think of the latest offer by Huawei to double the salary for most brilliant, talented professionals who may be coming back from the Silicon Valley and from other parts of the world to join Huawei and other tech giants such as Tencent in Shenzhen, which has become very quickly a center of innovation. That will be the engine and the powerhouse for China's sustainable development in the next stage. So what do you think of the attractions of Shenzhen for professionals? Lawyer He Jing has talked about the legal barriers, if any, that may prevent the free flow of human resources across the demarcations, visible or invisible, between Hong Kong and the mainland. You are expected to talk about, say, the attractiveness of high technology and, of course, Renzheng-face vision and competitive edge.
Right. I was actually at the Huawei campus about a month ago talking with some of their management. This was when their latest numbers were coming out. And this was something that was just sort of emerging. And I actually put this question to them. Are you changing your human resources recruitment strategy based on what has happened this year? And the answer, not to quote them or to speak for them, was more or less yes. That they are moving from maybe a fast follower in technology and innovation, which they are, very successful, to a leader that's not necessarily dependent on anyone. And part of that was starting to offer very high salaries to bring people into Shenzhen or their other research centers around the world and get the best of the best of the best. That's who they're going for now as of a month ago. And are those people going to go and live in Shenzhen? Well, they have a beautiful new R&D center they've opened there. It's absolutely spectacular. But they've also got their JV R&D centers all over the world. So one of, I think, the big results of what's been going on between Huawei and the US in this situation is they have made a very big decision that we are no longer going to be dependent and we're no longer going to follow, we're going to lead. And the first movement of that new sort of strategy is let's hire the best of the best, which is what they're doing right now.
Well, we just don't set our eyes on people in Hong Kong. We are talking about the overall competitive edge of the Greater Bay Area and what it means for all professionals from around the country of China. Look at the housing prices in Shanghai, Beijing. Shenzhen, of course, is no exception. The property prices are very expensive, but there's no limited space for the upward mobility of the younger generation, like this embarrassing situation in Hong Kong. In Shenzhen, very much like what happened 40 years ago when Deng Xiaoping, the architect of China's modernization program, decided to use Shenzhen as a testing ground to turn it into an experiment with capitalism. So, He Jing, what do you want to say about the success of China's experiments in Shenzhen and the...
from the legal market, we have seen some of the, I have some personal story. I have an office there. I have 8 or 9 lawyers sitting in our Shenzhen office in the business CBD area. And first of all, we actually find that it's not easy for us to find the really best like intellectual property lawyers. We actually find it's hard to recruit the best the legal talent. That's the first thing I want to say. And plus, that actually the salary we offer there is still a gap to catch up with Beijing or Shanghai. That's the first part. The second part is that we found that recently there are some lawyers are asking to move to Shenzhen. Part of the reason is that they think that Shenzhen offers a better quality of living. And also another interesting thing is they said that their spouse actually moving to Shenzhen to work for the best technology companies in Shenzhen. That's a very, very interesting move. We never heard about it before. The lawyers the good lawyers tend to stay in the Beijing or Shanghai, but you can see that the legal market, legal talents in Shenzhen seem to grow. So maybe, even this is probably a personal story, but I think it's probably replicating in the different sectors of the whole city. One of the things I'm asserting is that probably Shenzhen really has this technology, the industry booming, right, represented by the Huawei or Tencent, and a lot of new and stronger companies are growing. And they actually, some of the components they're making, some of the companies are actually become the leading player. They're drawing the best talents. One of my friends just told me, oh, he's moving from Hangzhou, from Alibaba, actually jumping over to one of the top leading companies in Shenzhen. So I'm seeing something is happening. Something definitely is happening.
Okay, Hong Hao, who's standing by in Hong Kong, let me have your thoughts on Macau. What's the point of having Macau as an important part of this scheme of economic integration? Macau is known for its casino industry, and there are no such things like innovation or whatever. People know Macau by the money game, tourism and the financial industry. What do you think of the position of Macau?
Yeah, well, Macau can certainly be a tourism center, with some tourism attraction, as you say, the casinos are not available elsewhere in China. And also, Macau is actually one of the more developed cities within this region. The per capita GDP of Macau is actually one of the highest in the world because of the take-ins from the casinos. So, I think Macau really does have a role to play, and also, many of the unique features in that city is not available elsewhere in China.
The fugitive bill that caused the unrest in Hong Kong could also be applied in Macau for the extradition of criminal offenses, on charges of criminal offenses. But why didn't we see any of the unrest that we saw in Hong Kong? Macau is a peaceful land, and the people there are very supportive of the role of the central authorities as well as the SCR government there. So what can you tell us about the mindset of younger people or whatever people who are so proud of living in Macau?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think Macau is more integrated into mainland China in terms of its economic system and also education system as well. Because the economic system rely heavily on Chinese tourism. And also, before the returning of Macau back to China, I think the central government actually laid down a substantial groundwork, taking lessons from the takeover of Hong Kong, handover of Hong Kong. So I think in many sense Macau culturally is more in tune with mainland China, and then at the same time, because of a very well developed economic structure in Macau, and also probably I would say culture is different, in the sense that people are probably in Macau are probably more interested in economic well-being rather than other priorities in life, and that's why I would say Macau in the recent social events serve as a symbol of stability in this region.
Jeffrey, let me quickly go over and have your thoughts on the future of Macau. Does it mean, we were talking about why Macau didn't see much of the unrest that we saw in Hong Kong. Now, is that partly because young people, most of them could be employed in the job market, and therefore we don't see anger of the young people in the streets. They don't turn to the street to voice their concerns. Do you think job market played an important role in shaping the attitudes of the younger generation in Macau?
It's a casino town, mostly, and casino towns are strange animals. Las Vegas is a very strange place, although it is quite close to Silicon Valley in the same way that Macau is quite close to Hong Kong and Shenzhen, so that's kind of interesting. If you actually look at revenue coming into Macau, it's overwhelmingly gambling, and it's overwhelmingly Chinese gamblers coming across the border. So revenue-wise, that city is deeply integrated into the Chinese economy. Hong Kong, I would say, is sort of a different scenario. It's a bit more independent. And then, the traditional folks from Macau have very nice jobs within the gaming industry as the casino heads and things like that. So it struck me as much more of an integrated entity economically into the mainland. And then I think it's just an unusual case. But it's a really interesting aspect of the whole Greater Bay sort of cluster. It's, you have Hong Kong, you have Shenzhen, Dongguan, and then you have Macau. It's a really interesting mix. It makes it a nice place to go.
Yes, indeed.
So I think it's a plus overall, but it's a bit unusual.
We'll wait to see what's going to happen next in transforming the Greater Bay Area into the next engine for China's sustainable growth. But you are watching Dialogue with He Jing, Hong Hao, and Jeffrey Towson, who's standing by and talking to us in Seoul, ROK, via satellite. Stay with us. We'll be right back. He Jing, we've been talking about the role or pilot programs of Shenzhen for years, since 40 years ago. Shenzhen set a very good example, but with the support of preferential policies. And therefore, many young people, ambitious ones, those with a great vision, went there, and some of them did make a success of their career, like Ren Zhengfei and Tang Sen. Having said this, what about the driving force behind the development of Shenzhen for the next stage of opening up? Is it only about innovation?
I think it's probably more about the economy of scale at the different the sectors. When we're really looking at the exciting part of the economy in Shenzhen, I think it's sort of mirror some part of like the Europe, but in a different way. Like I said, we are seeing more and more companies that really specialize in a certain sector in the industry. Someone just really like making the camera for the phones, okay? Someone making just the fingerprinting chipsets for the phones. But they're making more applications. They're now becoming more of a dominant player in not a very small but very specialized sector. That gives a tremendous momentum and the momentum and advantage for the whole economy in Shenzhen. I think that's where the probably bright future for that, and that gives the possibility to have the synergy to draw all the contribution from different cities in this region.
Hong Hao, so what do you think of the comparison between Shenzhen and Hong Kong when it comes to dynamics of the future that's shared by 9 cities in Guangdong, Macau, and Hong Kong?
Yeah, well, because of the development speed of Shenzhen, which is really astounding, Shenzhen is catching up fast. I think Hong Kong still leads in terms of its soft infrastructure. There are plenty of legal and financial professionals here, but then what Hong Kong really lacks is the high-tech industry and the innovative new economy industries that are probably going to take the society further from here. I think for the time being, even though Shenzhen is catching up really fast, and also the Shenzhen airport now, the volume it's handling is also catching up with that of Hong Kong in probably a few years. But you know, one has to look at the free flows of capital and human capital within this region. I think at this point in time, you know, for a foreigner to enter Shenzhen from Hong Kong, you still need a visa. If you want to take cash in and out of the border, you still need some sort of a permit, and there's a limit of amount of cash that you can take out or in. You know, and capital flow is largely through the connect scheme between the stock markets in Shenzhen and Hong Kong. So there are indeed some sort of policy hindrance between the cities to restrict the free flows of capital, financial capital and human capital. And I think it takes time for us to remove or equalize those differences between cities. So I would say that, you know, for now, you know, Hong Kong still leads, but Shenzhen is catching up really fast.
Jeffrey, we're talking about with the closure of the capital market, with the closure of the capital account and many other policy barriers that Hong Hao spoke of, Shenzhen in the near future won't be a serious match for Hong Kong. After all, Hong Kong could enjoy free flow of money, I mean, pretty low and reasonable income tax. So there are many strong factors that are quite in favor of the competitive edge of Hong Kong. In these areas, Shenzhen trails far behind. What do you think of the driving force behind the further integration, given all these barriers and adversity of the situation?
You know, there's the different systems, rules, regulations, and things like that. And then there's the idea of people, money, goods, and data. And are those things moving freely within the region, regardless of the system? And that's really what you want. That's what the U.S. has. You may start your company in Texas and incorporate it in Delaware, but the people, the capital, the data, and the goods just move between all these different regulatory systems. And that, I think, is moving more and more to the picture where Hong Kong has some advantages in the finance world because of its interconnections with the financial world, you know, other capitals. But in the most exciting areas, digital, advanced manufacturing, 5G, that's all Shenzhen. I mean, if I look at the 15 most interesting startups in the digital tech world in the southern part of China, they're all in Shenzhen. And I can't think of one off the top of my head in Hong Kong. So within those sectors where I really think that is the future to pay attention to, I think that's a Shenzhen story. And then Hong Kong looks to me like an area that has some specialization in things like finance, regulatory, in the same way that Macau has some specialization in gaming and entertainment. So you can see them sort of adopting different roles, but I would put all my money on tech and digital out of Shenzhen.
Despite the departure of John Bolton from the White House, we don't think the Pentagon will import any drones from Shenzhen. I'm joking, but what do you think of the possibility that the United States will easily decouple Chinese market, which is an important part of the global supply chain? Jeffrey?
I mean, this is one where in some areas the nature of the product is inherently not political, but it's an area where the government has concerns. Most governments have some concern about their telco networks. Drones, in theory, yes. In practice, no, I don't think it's that big a deal. But we're starting to see, based on what you're talking about, a segmentation where the U.S. is saying we won't do Chinese drones. And the rest of the world, especially parts of Europe, is saying, yeah, we don't care that much, it's fine. Like this whole idea of, is it politically sensitive, and is the fact that it's manufactured in China, the U.S. an issue? The U.S. has a lot of opinions on this right now. But if you go to most of the world, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Africa, people don't really care that much. Look, if the telco system's good and if the drone is good, we're fine with it. So this is, on a lot of this stuff, I think the U.S., which I'm an American, I think they're kind of speaking alone on a lot of this. And in other areas, there are more issues. So
you look at the fanfare of the Chinese
DJI,
media, Jeffrey. You look at the fanfare of
bag.
the Chinese media about the United States. Some Chinese observers have recently pointed out, look, we pay too much attention to the trade war, if any, between the United States and China. We should look elsewhere. For example, Wuhan. Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, chose to visit Wuhan, yet another second-tier city, during her short stay. and official visit to the PRC recently. What do you think of, say, the choice by Chancellor Angela Merkel of Shenzhen and Wuhan as an important part on her agenda when she studies very carefully the further cooperation between Germany and the United States during the absence of American leadership, when the United States puts America first in what is called a unilateral move and move of protectionism as well as populism. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I think Germany is going to go case by case, and they're going to look at what makes sense for them. They're going to consider any security concerns, and then I think the majority of cases it's going to work out fine. And I think Europe's going to do the same. I think Canada is going to do the same. I think Mexico is going to do the same. People are just going to do it case by case and use common sense on a lot of this. So I think this is not that big of an issue long term. In some areas it is, but in most areas not.
He Jing, Chancellor Angela Merkel visited Shenzhen and this time around Wuhan as an important part of her itinerary and agenda. So what do you think of those Europeans who set their eyes on Shenzhen, and the UK, after the Brexit by the end of October, they're going to turn to Shenzhen for inspirations, give them a reason for further cooperation, right?
And like I said, Shenzhen is not just the manufacturing center for the whole world. Shenzhen is the center of the applications, to making all the applications.
But Dongguan, yet another city in the greater
they
area,
develop a new product. They develop new applications. In application, create the market, create the demand, and then just draw the whole supply chain. So it become the head part of the whole supply chain. I think that's the big role of the Shenzhen is playing. You know, there's some other countries, they make a wonderful, very, very solid, the world-class components, but they need application to go for. They need someone to sell for. I think that's the big attraction of Shenzhen. I think that's why, whether it's Germany or the UK, eventually they want to come to Shenzhen and see, hey, how they can really supply to the Shenzhen.
I believe planners who shape the future of the Greater Bay Area or the Pearl River Delta region may have visited San Francisco, Tokyo a lot of times and try to bring back their experiences of the success. So Hong Hao, can you quickly tell us what can we learn from San Francisco and Tokyo? They have also had wonderful experiences in building their own Greater Bay economy.
Yeah, well, those are the leading sort of a Greater Bay economies that we are modeling after. I think Tokyo is renowned for its train system, high-speed railway system that connecting the neighboring cities in that region. I think San Francisco and the Bay Area is renowned for many famous global leading tech companies, especially internet companies in the world. So I think there are many things that we can learn from those Bay Areas, and I think building on top of the successful examples, we probably can integrate our Shenzhen, Macau, and Hong Kong Bay Area much better.
Thank you so much. Can I talk to Jeffrey Towson very quickly? Let's talk about San Francisco and Tokyo. Do you think the Great Bay Area will continue to be more of a concept than a matter of practice, and a successful story about practices in Tokyo and San Francisco? Because the Chinese government seems to be very overwhelmingly emphatic about the importance of the Greater Bay Areas. It seems all of the other provinces, metropolitans, have been trailing well behind the Greater Bay Area, and therefore Shenzhen will be the powerhouse. Is that more of a concept, a game of concepts, or do you think are you convinced that the Shenzhen will be a pilot program, very successful one?
Yeah, if you look at the digital world, which is my area, the epicenters of the digital world are Silicon Valley, Beijing, Shenzhen. Already, that's not a theory, that's today. Look at where the most successful companies are, that's where they are. What makes Shenzhen different is it's the only one of those three that's innovating in software, which we hear a lot about, but also in hardware at the same time, and it's putting that together. That's why the world's best drones are coming out of Shenzhen. That's why smart robotics, automation, smart bicycles, Mobike. It's the only region that's both a manufacturing hub and a sort of digital innovation hub at the same time. Silicon Valley doesn't do any of that. All their devices come from Asia. They just do the coding in Palo Alto. So that makes it very, very interesting right now. And I think that's what's going to set it apart. It will be this combination of manufacturing plus digital in this region. And I think it's going to be one of the big stories of the next 20 years will be Shenzhen and the Greater Bay Area.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey Towson, Hong Hao, and He Jing for the storytelling on the future of Greater Bay Area. But don't forget, we also have a millennium project called Xiong'an, right in our immediate neighborhood of Beijing. That's a lot. That's a big story. Thank you for being with us. Until next time, goodbye.